Everybody, welcome back to Kayfabe Critique. I'm David.
And I am Jason. What's up?
And so, we're into the conclusion part of our beginning of the NWO. So, covering the early days of the NWO and how it got started. And so, just picking right up where we left off when we were talking about the NWO doing different things. And we had talked about DiBiase joined, became the fourth man. And it just continued to roll from there. Like the Giant came in and joined and became number 5. And then shortly after, another member of the clique jumps over, Sean Waltman, and becomes 6.
Yeah, I actually finally had a chance to watch how that all went down thanks to the WWE Network and the NWO collection. So I was watching that and seeing how all of that happened. That was pretty cool. And just think about how the clique is ruling wrestling in both territories and influencing wrestling in both territories. And I mean, we kind of left off with Hog Wild and how now their takeover is like moving forward because Hogan wins the WCW championship and spray paints it with NWO, and they're rolling.
And it just continues to build from there because you go into not only adding the new members, but then by the time you get into Halloween Havoc, Hall and Nash capture the tag team titles.
Right, and even before Halloween Havoc, you have the War Games match where you've got Flair, Anderson, Luger, and Sting versus Hall, Nash, Hogan, and Sting. And you've got the fact that the Outsiders and NWO are wreaking so much havoc that they're starting to cause rifts in WCW, and they win War Games. With WCW thinking, oh, we're going to take it over, but they use this whole bogus Sting angle and they shake Sting up, and we know, and that whole story is for another episode. But
yeah, it's the building of the start of a story that's going to take an entire year to come to fruition.
Yeah, and then you go, like you said, you go to Halloween Havoc, which is one of my favorite pay-per-views of this era because of largely because of the NWO and just kind of the way that the presentation of it was done. And Hall and Nash take the tag team belts, and the crowd's chanting Diesel and Razor, and they are over like Rover.
And so when you look at it, in today's day and age, how long would you see a heel group last this long? Or would you see a heel group last as long and continue to win like this and dominate like this, like the way the NWO was doing?
No.
I mean, we've seen attempts like, with Nexus, with the Shield and stuff like that. And these groups always get stopped as they're building up momentum.
Yeah, the closest thing we've had to it is the Shield. And that angle with the way they handled the end of the Shield is one of the better angles that they've had in a while because it's again something you didn't see coming.
Right, and when you look at the Shield, it was like, yeah, they had some big moments in the Shield, but they didn't do the championship level or the complete.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, like, as the NWO, as big as it got.
Yeah, they did some damage. They did run-ins, and I was watching the Royal Rumble 2013 where the lights go out and they powerbomb the Rock through the table, stuff like that. So they did some damage without a doubt, but it wasn't, they didn't take over an entire company.
Yeah, and when you look at like a Nexus, for example, when Nexus jumped in and, they were cleaning house to a huge debut, and then they ended up having Cena squash Nexus like within 2 months.
Yeah, Cena takes a DDT on the floor and, basically eliminates the last 2 guys in the Nexus. So you haven't and won't see this level of dominance.
Right. You just don't see a heel come out and dominate anymore, let alone a heel group that was just completely destroying everything.
Yeah, I mean, it took them months to lose their first match, and I mean, they're just running roughshod. They're coming through the crowd. They're just doing whatever they want to do. I mean,
and it's so different that it continues to play into what Bischoff wanted with Nitro, of that different feel, and it's working. People are turning the channel to see fans from the past are coming back, and it's the hottest thing in wrestling.
The hottest thing in wrestling, and this shirt was the hottest thing in wrestling. I mean,
yeah, the spray painted logo, the little N, the big W, the little O. I still have one at home.
I gotta get one, and I would wear it in public tomorrow.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, like I had one that I wore out a lot. It was a normal shirt for me to wear out. I didn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about some of the other stuff, they were doing at this time, the announcements, the NWO announcements that would break in, and they would have their own little segments, whether they were black and white segments or whatever. It was just the NWO talking and kind of pushing the development of the group.
I mean, I would sit there and watch WCW Saturday Night, just kind of waiting to see something waiting to see one of these, because the rest of the stuff on there was like very forgettable, for lack of a better word. I mean, and then the NWO comes out and they're talking about buy the shirt. I mean, Nash is doing different voices and singing happy birthday to Hulk like Sinatra and stuff like that. I mean, they were just so entertaining.
And so, and we talked about early when we started covering the NWO about the Clique and some of the stuff the Clique would do backstage and that creativity that ran into the NWO. Like the Clique sign that ended up being moved into becoming, part of the NWO as the Wolfpack sign. And like, you see like Hogan coming out and doing their stuff. But that was really just a symbol of the Clique.
Yeah. And then you see the crowd start doing it more and more. And I mean, it's for the Turkish Wolf, and then the little group inside of the NWO prior to the black and red, you got Hall, Nash, and Six. They're referring to themselves as the Wolfpack.
Right. And so there's 3 of the 5 members of the Clique there. And, you talk about the influence that the Clique had on this. Like, so just looking at Hall and Nash in general, they're credited with coming up with the black and white. Thinking of doing the vignettes in black and white. Hall has been credited for the hip hop influence and the gangster rap influence that went into the NWO.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about '96, again, hip hop was so influential in everything in society, from fashion to music to movies. I mean, Tupac and Biggie. I mean, '96 was the year we lost Pac, and that was Pac was really starting to blow up by this point. I mean, Death Row Records and stuff like that. I mean, they're just playing into that whole kind of like gangster mafioso type feel.
Yeah, and so we're starting to get to the point where I think the original NWO, the hotness of the NWO kind of starts to die down.
Yeah.
But the last really great moment for me, I think, in terms of storyline, was the reveal that Eric Bischoff, the president of WCW, was actually the brains behind the New World Order.
Yeah, again, something you didn't see coming, because this is the same dude that they took a power bomb off the stage. So you wouldn't think of him being a part of the NWO. However, it just added to that storyline because of the fact that it's like, in order to stay in power, you need friends in high places. What higher place than the president of the company?
And what's interesting about this is, he was an announcer.
Mm-hmm.
Vince McMahon's an announcer at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Vince McMahon hadn't been truly acknowledged yet as the owner of the company.
Mm-hmm.
But here's Eric Bischoff, doing this before Vince McMahon, acknowledging he is the one running WCW and turning heel.
Mm-hmm.
So doing it, nearly, 13, 14 months before the Mr. McMahon character really emerges.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it definitely has some influence on it because people knew, they just weren't saying it, but they started to. It just got to the point where you just couldn't. It's like let's stop lying to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the stuff that he did, he just came across such... Bischoff was a true charismatic heel. He... you've heard... you hear his podcast, you understand he definitely was a good businessman. He definitely knows how to run a wrestling company. Mm-hmm. But he could be a star as well. He had star power, he had camera appeal, good mic skills, and could play a character well. So, this was just, to me, the icing on the cake, the final piece of the original NWO that just made it perfect.
It made it perfect, and if they had kept it at this, I think that they would have been just fine. But they made some additions that it's just kind of like they fed into the people. People with WWF ties, like you had Michael Wall Street or VK Wall Street or whatever he was at that time, and Big Bubba, Ray Trailer that joined. They played into it, but the original group the original group was the strongest, and by Starrcade 1996, you started to see some cracks. Mm-hmm. You started to see some vulnerability.
Yep. And then even though 97 was a big year for them, to me, the NWO was getting watered down, and that you could actually start to feel what's going to break WCW actually forming in 96 or 97.
Yeah, and with it starting to get, because it started to lose some of its, it started to lose the element of surprise, because it was like, they're going to come through the crowd, they're going to do a run-in, something like that.
Yeah, and you can only go so long as an outsider.
Yeah.
Like, before it's, all right, you guys have been here every week, you're no longer from the outside. So.
Yeah, and because you're starting to come in through the back end, to come in just like the rest of the boys and stuff like that, so.
Yeah. But, we had talked about at the very beginning, there's probably the most popular storyline in history, arguably one of the best storylines in history. We don't know if we'll ever see anything else this good, this built, this much anticipation, violence, realism. But let's also give credit where credit is due. If it wasn't for the NWO, we would have never had an Attitude Era.
Absolutely not. And even in 1996 in the WWF, you could begin to see the influence of what was going on the other channel, because this was the year where we got Austin 316 said, "I just whooped your ass." This was also the year in 1996 where you got the Mind Games match with Mankind and Shawn Michaels, and then you go to the Survivor Series in 1996.
Bret and
Austin. And also on that show, you get the crowd turning against the white meat babyface Shawn Michaels as the champion, and going with Sid. Sid had this presence. Who's the man? The crowd giving him dap and stuff like that. Those little things that started to turn the direction of the WWF, you started to see that happen in 1996.
Yeah, and no doubt about it that the NWO is what drove WCW to take over the Monday Night Wars. It pushed WCW as a better product. It made it a more interesting product, and caused WWE to have to step up their game. And Vince Russo, who goes on to be the head writer of the Attitude Era, acknowledged that his influence, what made him want to write that style was Eric Bischoff and the NWO.
Yeah, because Russo understood that what you had been doing, it just wasn't getting it anymore. I mean, he was on Livewire just talking about how are you content with this show being this bad, and it wasn't what people were connecting to.
So that is the beginning of the NWO. We hope you enjoyed all of our different segments on it. You know, stick around. We'll be coming back with more Kayfabe critique for you here shortly.
And don't forget to like us, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a good one. Peace.